Hello all! In today's video, we're going to be talking about some ways of structuring and organizing your document. Specifically, we're looking at how to do sections and lists in LaTeX. So, I've got myself, apparently I am writing myself a calculus textbook because, there aren't enough out there already. So, if I want to create this textbook, honestly, I'd probably be using things like chapters, but it's going to be a very short approach. Calculus, the quick version. I'll only subdivide my document into sections. So if I wanted to create a section for my document, let's see if we're talking about calculus, maybe we want to talk about limits. So I'm going to type \section here and then type the title of my section. So limit is a very good definition right here. Rigorous, definitely. Lovely. And then I'd want to maybe have a section on derivatives. And then maybe a section on integrals, etc. Guess what? The antiderivative is the same as the area curve. Okay, so if I compile this, I have some sections here. So you see we've got these nice headings, we've got numbers for our sections. There are ways of changing the format. That would all go in the preamble here. I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to change the way your sections look, that is definitely a thing that can be done. Let's see, maybe if I want to add some subsections here, so maybe I want to talk about limits numerically, plug stuff in, and then another subsection, limits graphically. Just look at the graph. Limits analytically. Actually, you can see on Overleaf, I'm starting to get this file outline here that can be useful for longer documents. You can just ignore it too. So do till so anyway, I've got my lovely subsections here. You can see we've formatted these as 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. The font's slightly smaller. So we've got our subsections. Say I didn't want to have a section number here. It's a usual convention, like maybe if I wanted to create an introduction that doesn't have a section number, if you put an asterisk by a thing that normally comes with numbers, usually that's a way of getting rid of numbers. There may be some exceptions, but this is usually the convention that people have adopted. So if I do section star, a highly rigorous textbook, trust me. So there I've got my introduction that does not have any number by it. So if you want to divide your document into sections, this is the way to do that. Let's say though, say I want to create some practice questions at the end of my document. This is also if you're using something like if you're typing up a homework assignment or something, and like you can create a new section for each problem. Sometimes it might feel like it's worth it. Sometimes it might not. If you just want to label your questions with question numbers, that's what we're getting into now, how to write various types of lists. So I've got my section on practice questions. I'd like to add some questions to this. I'd like them to be in a numbered list. So I am going to create an environment. I'm going to type begin. If you want a list that has things enumerated in some sense, so like a numbered list or like letters or something else, the enumerate command is what does that. Since I typed a begin something, I'm going to need to follow that up with end whatever I'm going to need to end whatever I began. So if I type end enumerate, you can see the red went away. LaTeX is no longer complaining. Probably if you were to get midway through typing enumerate, you saw that it had a suggestion. If you pressed enter, it would feed in some of this automatically, and you would see this thing that looked like item coming up. If you were writing any sort of list, each item in the list gets an item tag, and that's how you would begin a new sub point. So, for example, maybe one of my homework problems, I want to find the limit as x goes to 1, shortcut, if you want that right arrow, x to 1 of, how about, x squared minus 2x plus 1 over x minus 1. So then I would maybe have an integral problem, or derivative problem equals x to the 12th plus 1. And then maybe an integral problem dx. So I've got my lovely and definitely very thorough set of practice problems. And we see here, we've got our practice questions showing up with numbers 1, 2, and 3. Let's say, though, that I would rather not number these with, maybe I want to go Roman numerals. So there are various ways to do this. Currently, my favorite is using a package. This is kind of a big idea in LaTeX. If you're doing something that you suspect, more than maybe 5 people in the world are going to be doing, probably somebody has created a quick and elegant way of doing it. So there are ways of manipulating question numbers directly or question formats. I definitely suggest going to like the overleaf documentation, taking a look at this. But if I say use package, and I'm going to look at the enum item package, and then I'm also going to add, you can, to packages as you load them, add some special options. The one that I like is called short labels. So now if I want to change what these labels look like, I can just feed in my first number here. So if I feed in a capital, as long as it's something that's reasonably expected, if I want a capital I, Roman numerals in parentheses, that's going to fill that through. So that would be a quick, fast way of changing labels. There are other ways of doing it. So we've got our practice questions. I might move on from my textbook now and look at a few other list type descriptions. So say I wanted to got distracted from my calculus textbook and wanted to start writing up my grocery list, I don't necessarily need to number everything on my grocery list. I'd rather have something that just looks like bullet points. So instead of using the enumerate package, which has some sense of numbers or order, not enumerate package, enumerate environment, I'm going to say begin itemize. That's going to give me a list, but with bullet points or some other form of non-sequential orderings. So, I don't know, say I want bananas, onions, maybe milk, bread, and eggs, half a carton of eggs. So now I've got my grocery list printed here. If I was bugged by the spacing, there are ways of adjusting that using the options in the package. So if I wanted everything closer together, I could do that. Say though, one of the useful things about the way LaTeX formats things is if I decided, there's a blizzard coming, I should bump up the priority of milk, bread, and eggs. If I just retype, I cut those from the bottom of the list, pasted them back at the top. Reordering there is pretty quick. If I were going back to my calculus textbook example and decided, nope, I'm going to start with integrals before limits, which is, a very wise choice, I could, again, just cut and paste that question there. And I get the numbers automatically renumbering themselves in the correct order without me needing to adjust this. Some word processing word processors will do this, but it can be a little bit more of a headache. So this is fairly nice. Say though I wanted to mess with the numbers in a list. So the classical binary joke. Counting in binary. So I want to begin enumerate, and I'm fine with my automatic numbers like this. So I've got, and then my second favorite thing is there may be a way to actually change the numbering into base 2. I don't know that offhand. If I want this to print, though, it's not supposed to print as the numeral 2. It's supposed to print as the numeral 1, 0. Unfortunately, if my items are thinking in base 10, I can jump ahead so that the number 10, which looks like the number 2 in binary, shows up. I can reset. There's this internal counter that keeps track of how far along I am in my enumerate. There's a lot that could be said about counters. There's a lot that you can do with counters. I'm not going to talk about all of it. But if I type set counter, and then I need to tell what counter I'm resetting, so the enumerate counter, and then I've got my highest list level. That is also something that I'll demonstrate in a second, but enum I, highest list level, and then I'm going to set this for the number before the one that I want. So if I set this counter to the number 9, that's going to make it print what it believes is the number 10 here. Really, again, we know that this is binary, so we know that this is a 1, 0, but that would be the way to jump from one number to another that's not immediately, at least in base 10, in sequence. So I've got that. Again, I wanted to show you how to do nested lists. So if I wanted to add some details to my calculus problem here, I could just begin a new numbered list, or I could stick a itemize in here. So if I wanted to have my students first, use the limit definition, and then use the power rule. If I hit compile, I've got this sublist right here. If I didn't like the way the formatting was happening, maybe I want capital letters and a dot after them, I could make that happen. So those are the big common types of lists. You can do several layers of nesting with lists, change around a lot of things involved with them. Last environment that's a bit less well known, but I kind of like in various contexts, is the description environment. That's there are ways of getting list labels other than the standard ones, but if I really don't have any sort of sequence, but I still kind of want some heading to my list items, I can use the description environment. So say I'm jotting down some notes for my resume and I want to list off which courses I taught in various years. If I write item and then in brackets, maybe, like I want to talk about in fall 2023, I taught Math 108, Math 111, and Math 225, and then in spring 2024, I taught Math 111 and Math 341, etc. If I hit compile, it formats the headings here that I want as headings. I could tweak how that formatting appears, change what it looks like, but that gives me some flexibility to keep consistent formatting. I can tweak things once and then everything in the list appears that way. I don't need to individually type that I want each of these appearing in bold. So that can also be a very valuable way of listing things if you don't want to worry either about assigning number labels or no labels whatsoever. So again, these are some tools to get you started on sections and lists. There's a lot more depth that you can go into, and so I invite you to check out what's available. Thanks, and happy typing.